I've always been interested in speed. I've always enjoyed it. My brother and I we had fast cars when we were younger. I've always enjoyed the competition that sort of naturally evolved between, two people with equipment that was capable of going fast. I've always been a competitive person.
Look at the way it's handling. All right, Rolling Thunder, Jesse James, two George Linders designs. 30-foot Chris Cat and the M43 Rolling Thunder Conquest 32-footer. Radically outboard powered, and whoa, look at them.
Offshore has become a very quickly evolving sport. I think the thing that sets it off from most motorsports would be the element in nature where you're running out in the open ocean, which is probably as much a race against nature as it is against man. It's grown tremendously, like in geometric progressions over the last couple seasons. 5-6 years ago, it was, the technology and the speed advances were very slow, as a mile an hour here, a mile an hour there, and the boats were basically all the same design, same motors. Now there's a lot more competition, so the push is on to run faster and have the best boat be the best team. It takes experience to be good, and it takes a lot of practice. It's not the kind of sport that you're going to go out and do well, and unless you're very dedicated and have a certain amount of rhythm.
Jesse James is back in action. Both engines are back to full power, and a sleepless crew are anxious to make up the lost day.
Driving an offshore boat is mostly a task in navigation. Getting from point A to point B in the straightest line is generally the fastest way. Some avoidance of lobster pots, which can break a propeller if you hit them. In rough water, the boat needs to be driven somewhat, so that as you leave the water, the drive is straight, so that the boat flies straight while it's in the air, and upon entry, the drives need to be straight again. Basically, offshore racing is 90% done on land, and in the pits. All the navigation is done beforehand, and, endurance racing is really a venue of preparation.
My job as throttleman is to make the boat run as fast as possible under given sea conditions. And that entails trimming the boat, setting the angles of the drives, and backing off whenever we're in the air on the throttle so that I don't override the engines. And then being back on the throttle as soon as we hit the water again to maintain as much speed as possible. The typical race has at least 2 to 3 foot seas, and probably the average throttle change would be at least 1 per second, somewhere around there. So to be several thousand in the course of a race, it takes a coordinated effort and a lot of practice between the two of us to really work it out. Winning a national championship, that's the most important thing. If you could only have one thing, probably the highest idea of success and the highest pinnacle that you could reach would be to be a national champion. This will be the first totally race design boat that we've run. Our previous 2 boats have been compromise boats, quote unquote. They're pleasure boats and race boats. It'd be like racing a Camaro on the track or a Corvette or something like that. Now we're going into a full-blown Formula One type deal, and it's strictly meant for racing. It's totally designed around racing, and know that we're going to have as much or more horsepower than anybody else on the circuit.
During the race, the team only fields 2 players, but there's also a huge backfield of people who make the team a success. There's dozens and dozens of riggers and engine builders who help us field a competitive team. There's painters and associated suppliers who put in thousands and thousands of man-hours to make the team a success all year long.
Safety is just something that we take very seriously. It's something that I've been pushing for a while. We design capsules which are structurally impregnable. Even if the boat totally disintegrated, we still have a protective cocoon around us, and we're belted in with a 6-point harness and a full-face helmet and all that. That's totally new to the sport. And then we got the boat, we've got the motors, we've got the team. I think we've proved that, and we've got the the dedication that it takes. Now that the equipment is there, I think we can reach some levels that we haven't even come close to.
1986 is a tough season for us. We knew the competition would be tough, and it was tough. The other obstacles were that we were the new kids on the block in open class, and the people who are old-time participants are very territorial. The boat was very competitive. We won our fair share of races. All in all, the season was relatively successful. Going into Key West, we were really looking for a world title to clinch the season. We were, hard charging. We knew that the first 2 races were very important in the 3-race series. The game plan for Key West is to go out hard for the first 2 races and try to establish a points lead going into the 3rd race, so you can afford to run a little more conservatively in the last race, which is what we did. We went out hard in the first race. We ran hard enough so that we even beat the superboats by 10 or 15 minutes. The second race with us was more or less the same game plan as the first race. We were excited after beating the whole fleet in the first race to try to do it again. We went out hard, tried to separate ourselves from the rest of the pack, and we were running with maybe the top 3 or 4 boats. As we ran the Sand Key, conditions were a little bit rougher. We hit a sort of a freak large wave that the boat launched off of and then stuffed into an even bigger wave, and the boat ran maybe 100 feet underwater. And in that incident, Mark's life was lost. The aftermath of the accident was many, many months of trying to decide what to do with the team. And in there, we had decided that to try to keep some of Mark's dreams alive, that we would keep the team going, try to build a newer and faster boat and incorporate more safety gear. Mark was one of those people that always said that you need to try to learn from your mistakes and keep going, and we decided we wanted to try to make the sport a safer sport. The F-16 canopy was one of the projects we took on to try to design a better canopy and a safer canopy and all the associated support systems that need to go with it, like driver cooling, restraint harnesses, and an impregnable cockpit. In the event of an accident, the water won't get at the driver or the throttleman. The design concept behind the new 48-foot superboat that we're building is to be the fastest offshore boat in the safest offshore boat. Basically, the hard part about doing a project like that is that every primary component on that boat is built and designed from scratch. There isn't one off-the-shelf component on the boat. We basically started from the propellers, which are the biggest props that have ever been built in offshore, coupled into a drive system that's the strongest that's ever been built in offshore, coupled with 2 4-valve big block engines that are the most efficient engines that have ever been built in offshore, and all put into a boat that's designed and built to be the fastest and safest offshore boat.